Hello, and thank you for joining me today as I talk about building a lean, mean lead generating machine with outbound prospecting. We've actually got quite a lot to cover today in a short period of time, so I'm going to go through this as quickly as possible, but you'll be able to access the slides after for reference. Today we'll be covering what outbound prospecting is and how it fits into the sales process, the 4 stages of building your lead generating machine with some examples, how you can scale your outbound prospecting, and some bonus tips and content and examples as we go through. Just before we start, to set the scene, my name is Mark Colgan. I have over 11 years experience in sales and marketing, mainly in the B2B space. I studied marketing at uni, but started my career in sales. I then transitioned over into marketing after about 4 years. I took an early retirement a few years ago and traveled for 12 months, but I didn't have enough money in my pension pot, so I had to go back to work, where I started working with multiple B2B SaaS companies with their sales and marketing, mainly focusing on sales processes, sales automation, and marketing automation. Now I'm currently Chief Revenue Officer at TaskDrive. We offer a lead generation and data enrichment service for B2B companies, some of which I'll be explaining in examples throughout this presentation. So outbound prospecting, that's what you're here to learn about. So I thought I'd start with a definition, and this is really, there's lots of definitions, but this one I believe rings true. So for me, outbound prospecting is a direct marketing channel whereby you identify your target customers and directly reach out to them and introduce them to your company, its products, and its services. Now, a lot of people will say that the goal is usually to book a call or demo for your sales team. However, I believe that the goal is to start a conversation and to position yourself or your brand as a trusted advisor. So it's not all about the sell in the first email. And it's important to remember that outbound prospecting is just one lead generation strategy. It sits and can work alongside SEO, inbound, email marketing, affiliate and referral marketing, and as well as like side projects like HubSpot's website grader. And also it's part of the sales process. So the prospecting part is at the very beginning and the lead generation stage where you research, you prospect, and you do the outreach. That evolves into the lead conversion. So that's typically during a sales call or a demo or a free trial if your product has a free trial. And then there's obviously a close when they become a paying customer. And the final part of that sales process is the customer fulfillment. So that's where you deliver the value, you nurture the customer, and you ensure that they succeed in using your product. A lot of companies ask, will outbound work for them? And I think yes, in theory it will, especially if you can articulate your value proposition. You have a high quality product or service and you can scale the delivery of this service. Usually companies have an average order value of around $1,000 per year. And of course you have somebody internally who can close these deals that you generate. A lot of the times that you'll find that you get replies from your outbound emails that require a further call or additional information. So you need to have that person there. That could be the founder, it could be you, or it could be a sales team. It depends on the size of your business and the stage that you're at. So a few other topics before we get into talking about outbound prospecting, and these are of my opinion really, but in 2019 you really need to offer value, and you need to offer this value without expecting anything in return. You need to understand that the buyer's journey has various different stages, such as awareness, consideration, and decision. And you also need to realize that the buyer's journey has changed significantly over the last few years, but a salesperson's role hasn't. So there's often a disconnect there. And also, we need to remember that only 3% of your market are actively buying at any one time. So that means that 97% of people aren't actually buying. And whilst you can see on the right-hand side, a small percentage will be open to buying, the majority are not. So you need to think about what you're going to do with that remaining 90%. Moving on to actually building your lead generation machine, I've broken this down into 4 separate steps. These are planning, research, message, and launch. And I'll go through each one of these in a bit more detail. So first of all, planning. Before you do anything, you really need to understand who you are targeting. And you do this by understanding your ideal customer profile. Now, this is all about the company. It's not the individuals, it's the companies that you want to target. And you may want to define them through different filters such as their revenue or funding, number of employees. It may even be location. It can obviously be a combination of these, and I recommend it is. The narrower your ideal customer profile, the better you'll get the results. And it could also be around the budget and technologies they might be using. Once you've understood your ideal customer profile, so the type of companies, you then need to think about which individuals within these companies you want to be targeting. And this is known as your buyer personas. And here you're really looking at job titles, their seniority, again, their location, what some of their challenges and motivations are. You also want to understand where they spend time online and what communities they belong to. So when you are creating content in your messaging, which is the third stage of the lead generating machine, you're able to write messages that really does resonate with them because you understand your buyer personas. And it's also a very good point to remember that when we buy as human beings, we buy to satisfy one of two main needs. That is a need to avoid pain or loss, or a need to gain pleasure. And when it comes to B2B sales, avoiding pain or loss is a much more powerful message to communicate with when you're trying to convince people to reply and start a conversation with you. So also during the planning stage, you want to be thinking about the pain points, and this is important as you want to show prospects how your product or service will help them avoid that pain or a loss. So you do this by speaking to existing customers or prospects, speak to your sales team. Those people are speaking to these individuals on a daily basis. Also look at job descriptions, because you'll see in a number of job descriptions based on your buyer personas what their key objectives are and what they'll be responsible for in the role. And it's really important, as I said, to know this for your messaging. Now, you may be in a situation where you have a very large audience with a number of different ideal customer profiles and a number of buyer personas within these. So we need to break it down a little bit more and think about campaigns. And the reason being is that the same message to multiple personas just simply won't work. So you need to segment your prospects into smaller campaigns. This also helps you when personalizing the messages too. So you might want to do this by location, by industry, by their job title, or it could be to do with specific company news, industry events, and industry updates. So these are all different ways to split out your campaigns. Regardless of which way you do it, it's just important to break it down into smaller chunks. And lastly, at this stage, you also want to prepare for you need to prepare the outreach email. I highly recommend you use a spare domain. So our main domain is taskdrive.com, but we may want to use taskdrive.net or taskdrivenow.com, a different variation of the domain. Even if we follow the best practice, our emails still could be marked as spam, and that has a very detrimental effect to your main email domain if you're using that for outreach. There are a number of things here that you need to set up, but I can provide the detailed guides to doing so after this presentation. So that's the planning stage. We're moving swiftly into the research. Before you think about research, you also want to think about personalization, because you're emailing a person and you're not just a prospect. There are three main levels that I like to look at when it comes to talking about personalization. And these are looking at the individual level. So looking at the contact details, the job title, recent social activities. So what posts have they shared? What have they updated? Has it been a recent job anniversary? What content have they authored? What interests can you determine from maybe even their LinkedIn profile? That's the individual level. Then you have the persona level. So that's all about the current objectives, their challenges, their motivations, their fears, the day-to-day roles, the skills that they have, the tools that they likely use, online publications and relevant content to them. Because if you don't have the time, or you can't personalize it on the individual, then you can always fall back on the persona. Then the final stage is the account or industry. So here you could look at revenue, address, industry, case studies, recent news, awards won, technology that they use, the employees, M&A activity, funding, etc. So there are hundreds of different ways. In fact, over at TaskDrive, we have split this out into over 80 different personalizational points, which you could use to include in your outbound campaigns. And I think we've all received these emails before. No personalization. It's not specific to me as a person or to me as my persona in my role, and it looks like they can do everything. And in 2019, it just doesn't cut it. Really, in 2019, we can be so hyper personalized that you can send emails like this. How was your spinach and feta 3-egg omelette this morning? Because you saw it on their Instagram. You notice on Facebook that they like the page, keep looking at my effing red trousers, and they also like a lot of YouTube videos about dogs. So here's a picture of a dog in red trousers just for you. So you can be really, really personalized with your email outreach. Of course, I'm joking. That's just creepy and it's way too personalized. You really do need to find the balance between the personalization. And you do that by using merge tags. So whenever you are doing your research, you want to put the answers or the data that you have into separate columns. And I'll show examples of this later in the slides. When you're thinking about research, there's a number of different data sources that you can use. Some are free, some are paid, some may even be freemium. So, but when you are looking at these, have a look at where your audience is going to be. So LinkedIn is a great source for up-to-date data, but you may want to look at Clutch if you're targeting agencies. You may look at directories if you're targeting restaurants, or Google Maps even if you're going for restaurants. Podcasts could be a great place for you to start doing some research. And then you have the larger databases like Discover.org, ZoomInfo, Datanyze. You've also got Similar Tech, Facebook groups. There's so many different data sources. You just need to really work out where it is that you'll be able to find your leads. And when it comes to lead sourcing, you need to definitely take the mentality of building a list. You don't want to rent and you don't want to buy a list, because that list might be out of date, and also others may have purchased that data and spammed them in the past. So you don't want to be just another company spamming them. You also want to think about building dynamic lists, and you do that by focusing on trigger events. So those are moments when a prospect is likely to make a buy-in decision, and it also can be updated on a regular basis. And at TaskDrive, we actually have over 15 different lead sourcing playbooks, which I've included a few. I've included a few in this presentation. However, if you're interested in receiving some, you can just send me an email. Sorry about this. You can send me an email at mark@taskdrive.com. Try and use the word playbooks in the subject, and I'll send those to you. So just to give a couple of examples, here is an example called the in-market. Here's the in-market playbook. So here's where you really look at for competing or complementary products to yours and identify those that are most likely to be interested in your product. So for example, if you were a cold email copywriter, you would want to find people who are using cold email tools like Mailshake, Woodpecker, Lemlist, all of the tools that you can think of. Because if people are showing an interest in these tools, they are likely in need of using a service like yours. Again, if you're a cold email copywriter. Then you have also the currently hiring. This is a really good time to speak to companies. If they're investing in the growth of their team, their businesses, then they actually may be presenting them with new challenges. If a team has grown from 2 to 10, then that comes with its unique challenges for that manager or for the directors there. And you can use LinkedIn to save searches or save job alerts, so you receive emails once a week or once a month with new companies that are currently hiring. In a similar example, the new role is when somebody has started a new role. And what I would recommend is that you look at the senior roles of the decision makers, and you use LinkedIn Save Searches to let you know when somebody has started a new role. In this case, we're looking at sales development managers, and 98 of those have started a new job in the last 90 days. And when somebody starts a new job, they're likely wanting to make some changes and make some purchasing decisions. So it's a really good time to start speaking to them. And as you can see from this example, this is a gentleman who said he switched to Chili Piper at his last 2 companies. So he's brought Chili Piper to those 2 new companies, and he'll bring that tool wherever he goes. So it's a really good time, and it's definitely an opportunity for you to introduce a product, even if you've tried in the past to that company, because they've now got a new contact there. The reverse IP is another very popular lead sourcing playbook. So this is where you look at companies who are coming to your website, and then you review to see which individuals within those companies are coming to your site. Now, it can be quite challenging sometimes to find the exact individual, but if you think from a persona level, if you're targeting marketers, you can have a look at which are the marketing professionals from these companies, and then you can tailor your outreach to them based on the pages that they viewed. It's something that we do very well here at TaskDrive, because we know this traffic knows about TaskDrive, and therefore we can tailor our message accordingly. Finally, we've got the new technology. This is really relevant if you are selling into businesses that use a complementary product. I know Gorgeous, which is a e-commerce live chat AI platform, used the new technology trigger to target companies who had recently started using live chat, and they had Shopify installed on their website, or they were Shopify websites. And they used that because they could only really sell into companies who already used live chat. So using a tool like Similar Tech, you can actually receive alerts when new customers or when companies start using new technologies. So it's really, really smart. And again, it can build these lists on a weekly and monthly basis so that every day you have new data, rather than just building a list based on somebody's job title, because that just doesn't work anymore. So just to, once you've kind of got all these playbooks, you want to collate all the data together, organize it into those campaigns, which you spoke about in the planning section. If you're using merge tags for personalization, make sure that they're set up correctly, as each email outreach software is different. Please, please, please validate the emails. You really want to reduce the amount of bounces that you get. And a lot of companies make this mistake. If you've hired a VA to do this for you, you need to ask yourself who is checking their work. So you obviously want to have a quality assurance process in place there, as it needs to be double checked. Even if they're a great researcher, we're all human, we make mistakes sometimes. So on to stage 3, messaging. So when it comes to messaging, people often talk about cadences, and a cadence really is a strategy which molds your target audience needs and encompasses all or some of the communication channels. And it can also be called a sequence or a follow-up sequence. And really you're looking at the amount of attempts, the media or the channels that you use, the duration of the follow-up cadence, the spacing, the timing in between those, and the content. What's your actual message going to be? And it can be very difficult to select the right media channels. The most important thing is to use the channels that your prospects use. I think that's key. And also, if you have a transactional sale with a short sales cycle, then you may just want to use email and social, like LinkedIn. However, with large deals, longer sales cycles, you might start with email, but you might also want to introduce phone, direct mail, or even personalized experiences. There's a picture of a mariachi band there, because I think if you have a large enough deal size, you may as well send a mariachi band around to the office. It will certainly get a response. For working with our customers here, we really try and we use this table to give some context. On the left here, let me just close it down. On the left here, you can see the different channels, and across here is the average deal size per year. So really, if it's under $1,000 per year, then really email, social, maybe general video would work. As the deal size gets higher, you can start to do more personalized messaging. And it really comes down to the fact that these take more time and more skill to set up, but also deliver. But like I said, if you have a $100,000 plus deal size, then send a mariachi band around. I think one day I'm definitely going to do that. So moving on to the actual what these cadences can look like. Here are 2 examples of one's from G2, formerly G2 Crowd, where you can see that on the first day they send email and have a social touch. They then follow up on the second day with call and voicemail. 5th day, 6th day, I'll leave these up here so you can take a look. And the one on the right is a sequence from Outreach.io, and this is how they work their sequences. I've got a lot of recommended reading for sequences, which I can share with you after. So when it comes to writing the messages, I believe there's 3 golden rules. The first is, remember, the email is not about you, it's about them, it's about your prospect. And the goal is that you want to start a conversation. You're not trying to sell to them. And really what you want to think about is playing the long game and becoming a trusted advisor. My 4th bonus tip, which is a little bit hidden here, is hire a copywriter. For example, I'm not a plumber. And if there was a leak in my bathroom, I wouldn't try and fix it myself. I would call the professional in. Now, if you're trying to produce conversion-oriented copy, then definitely hire a copywriter. And you may want to bring them in for the first bit so they produce the bulk of the templates, and then you can tweak and tailor them as you go along. But it's a very, very unique skill set and quite hard to find some good copywriters. Again, if you want some recommendations, please do let me know. When it comes to the elements of a cold email, I like to break it down into 4. You've got the subject line, the opening sentence or sentences, the main body, and the call to action. So subject lines, you often hear the advice is that you need to get them to click the email and open it. Now, if you really wanted to get people to open your email, this is the subject line that you need to use. I've got your wife. That will get almost 100% open rate. However, it's not going to be effective because you're tricking people. So the goal is to not actually trick people into opening your emails, but you do want to create enough intrigue. So you can do that by making sure that they're personal, making sure that they're short, try and provoke some curiosity and offer value. Some examples here. So this is using humor, which can be very, very tough to actually do in such a short space of time. But this one came out around Halloween. Quick question. Again, it's good, it works, but it will get saturated. And this one here is new location, because that was based on somebody moving. One that works for me at the moment is name, how do you do it? Moving on to the opening sentences. So for me, the point of the first sentence is to get the prospect's attention and prove you did your research and your personalization. And then your second sentence ties that into your product value proposition. So you want to make the first sentence as much about them as possible, and you want to customize only the first two sentences because that reduces the amount of time it takes to customize the entire email sequence. And here's a good example of a opening sentence. Smash revenue targets is a phrase that I've used on my LinkedIn profile. So I can see that Danica has gone on there, looked at my LinkedIn profile, and she's using those, using my own words, and then she uses them and pitches or transitions into their value propositions. That's a very, very smart and really good example of a good opening sentence. Another one from Chorus, which funny enough is a competitor of the previous example, and they mentioned that they saw or they noticed that I liked somebody, so an influencer's post on social, and they provide a screenshot. Now this obviously is going the extra mile. It takes a lot more time to put these messages in, but it really depends on what the deal size is. For me, looking to buy Chorus, I would be spending thousands of dollars a year using their software, so it's worth them taking the time. Here's another example from LinkedIn. What I say on my LinkedIn profile is that I can wax lyrical, so I can talk for a long time about prospecting, as you can probably tell, and sales automations. And you can see Antoine, he used this in his outreach to me. So it's really personalized, it's using my own words or a variation of my own words. And I quite like his tone here, where he said, he'd like to take me up on that, but only for 10 minutes. So I think that's very, very smart. And yes, I did book a call with Antoine. Moving on to the main body, what you also need to be thinking of is focusing on the pain point. We discussed that a little bit earlier when it came to the buyer persona research. Please, please, please resist the urge to pitch your product. It's not about your product, remember. Utilize specific and relatable social proof based on the campaign and the segment that you're targeting. Do not list features. Don't tell me A, B, and C. You just want to provoke a question and paint a picture of their life without the pain, and make it relevant to them. I think I see so many emails that come my way that just are not relevant to me and my role. When it comes to calls to actions, there's a lot of advice out there. The one that is working for me and I'm seeing across my clients is first name, would you be interested in finding out more? Or first name, is this something that is important for you at the moment? What you really want to do is get a reply. Remember, the point is to encourage a conversation. And by getting a reply, whether it's yes or no, it really helps the spam filters determine that your emails aren't spam. Because if you get replies, it means that people are at least finding something of value within the emails enough to reply. So really, really important. A quick note on email deliverability. It's getting so hard to reach the inbox, and it almost feels a little bit similar to what SEO is, with 200 ranking factors to actually show up in the search engines. It almost feels like there's 50 different factors that affect whether your emails will be delivered. And there are other experts out there that could talk in more detail about this. Just want to share an example from Lead IQ, which was a really, really good outreach. He could see that I had mentioned one of his competitors in a Slack group, and actually he wanted to show me that some of their customers have switched from his competitor to their company. That is, for me, guaranteed level of personalization. I'm going to set up a call, and we did, and we're trying out Lead IQ as we speak. Another great example from HubSpot using personalized video here is they've created a video which looks at my profile within the HubSpot platform. However, there's a few things that even the best companies like HubSpot can get wrong. Personally, I feel the opening sentence of "Hope your week is going well so far" is a bit of BS because she doesn't know me, and also she's misspelt the name of the company. Which is a bit of a no-no. It's the first thing that I saw and spotted. So even the big companies who do really well with outbound can get it wrong sometimes. That's why you need to have that QA on your research. You also want to make sure you're handling responses. I see a lot of our customers kind of failing at this. You want to handle replies coming into your cold emails in a very, very quick and timely manner. This will significantly increase your chance of getting a demo or getting a meeting. You've just managed to get somebody's attention in a few minutes, and you could lose it forever if you don't reply. And the money truly is in the follow-up. It can take up to 18 touches to generate a response from a cold prospect, and most people give up after 4 touches. So make sure that you have your follow-up, your cadences, and your multi-touches across the different channels, because it really does work. And some follow-up best practices are providing added value, Don't just say, hey, did you see my previous email? Arouse curiosity, make sure that they are personalized, at least at a persona level, and they must be spread over time as well. You wouldn't want to send 7 emails once a day for a week. And also, here's some more follow-up do's and don'ts. I appreciate I'm running through this quite quickly, but you want to share content, remove people when they request it, choose the right time, do it often, add a clear call to action. Certainly don't bump the email to the top of the inbox. Don't make them feel bad for not replying. And please, please, please don't take rejection personally. It isn't personal. People are just busy and inboxes are getting more cluttered every time. Here's a really good example from Lean Data. I want to show you their persistence, but I want to show you also where they went wrong. So here's a message from Albert. He talks about revenue operations, which is something that I should be interested in. Doesn't pitch too much, but he just kind of teases my curiosity. So does it make sense to connect? As I was preparing for this talk, I actually didn't, because I wanted to see where this went. So he sent a follow-up, and here he is, again, talking about their product and, again, some of the pain points I may have. Here he's adding some additional value. This is from some non-competing partner of theirs, I guess. It's Clary is something completely different, but he's sharing a piece of content that he thinks will be relevant. This is a really good follow-up because he's not trying to pitch to me. He's apologizing for his persistence. I wouldn't ask for him to apologize, but he's really expressing that given my role, he feels that there'll be value in having a conversation. He then sends another email, I think Dreamforce, which is later on in November. He's asking if I'm going to be there or want to visit, and which is great. Again, trying to add value, trying different tactics and different messages. He then sees that email's not working, so he decides to come onto LinkedIn. So he messages me on LinkedIn, gives me a pitch of what Lean Data is, and then wants to give me the opportunity. That's a little bit more about him than it is about me, but I'll forgive him. And then he sends me another follow-up, and by this time I feel a bit guilty. So I say, okay, Albert, let's do this. Let's set up a call. And then, as you can see, he asked the question if I use Salesforce. And at TaskDrive, we don't use Salesforce. So he did all of this follow-up. He did all of this messaging, all this personalization. I was a prospect in his sequence, but they hadn't done their research. So this is why doing the research is so important, because it's just wasted a huge amount of time for him and me. And now, whilst I'll forgive them, some prospects may not be so forgiving. So there's some further reading here, which I can provide the links to after. Some awesome content from Jason. Beck has some incredible content around flipping the script. And there's some really good examples of good cold emails broken down. But again, I can provide the details. So we're at the final stage, launch and optimize. When it comes to looking at launching your sequences, I often get asked, what's the best technology to use? If you're just doing simple email outreach, you've got Jamelius, Lemlist. Your Ample Market is great if you want data as well as email. You also have Reply.io. From a sales enablement side of things, so these are bigger tools that allow you to do multi-channel outreach, SalesLoft, Outreach, and FrontSpin. SalesLoft and Outreach could be classed as very similar. I'd say FrontSpin is slightly different, and as it was built for cold calling first. So if you heavily rely on outbound dials, I strongly recommend checking out FrontSpin for your sales enablement platforms. When it comes to video, we've seen HubSpot use the example of HubSpot. They use the video. Vidyard is a great platform, or Loom, which is like the video recording that I'm using now. And if you're trying to build up personalized experiences, I didn't go into too much detail on these, but you could use tools like Segment, Clearbit, and even ConvertFlow to allow you to show personalized calls to actions on websites based on the UTM parameters that you could include in the links. Again, I could speak for hours about these. A lot of people also ask, what should it look like once I've set it up? There's 2 examples here. On the left, you've got outreach. This is where you can see that you've got the different steps across 12 steps across 20 days. That's how it may look in your outreach sequence. You're looking on the right-hand side at Reply.io. It's effectively saying a very similar thing. Here's your steps on day 1. Day 3, you need to send a LinkedIn message. Day 7, send an email. Day 14, call. So what I'm trying to show you here is, regardless of the platform you decide to use, they kind of do the same thing. And it just looks like a sequence of activities. But again, different platforms have their own pros and cons. When it comes to measurement and reporting, I'm often asked, what's the best reply rates, what's industry standard? And I have to admit, every industry is different. Every audience has a different maturity level when it comes to responding, especially to emails. What I would say is you're doing well if you're getting 60% open rates, your reply rates are 45%, your conversion rates are 20%, and you close win 50%. You convert 50% of the meetings. That's if you've got your sales process down and you're targeting right. Now, these numbers won't be good if you haven't done your targeting and research properly. You might have a lot of replies, but they may not be the right people to speak to. So when it comes to typical results, this is something that was shared on LinkedIn. So if you just send a templated email, you're going to get a 1.5% reply rate, which is awful. Please don't do this. But if you send a well-researched, targeted email that's personalized at the account and contact, so at the account and individual level, likely to get 20% reply rate. And that's just email. If you include emails, but also with calls and continue in the cadence for 8 emails, that's 50% reply rate. Doing all of the above, plus using creativity in your messaging and video or using direct mail, 70%. And then if you do all of the above, but have also established yourself as a credible brand on LinkedIn, for example, sorry, it's covering the key metric here, you can expect an 80% reply rate. And I just want to share an example of a campaign that I ran just the other week. Oh, excuse me, sorry. Where are we? I'll share that example in a bit. It's a few slides long. So when it comes to your campaigns, what you want to constantly do is learn, iterate, and repeat. Once you get it right for one campaign, the process is pretty much the same. You go through the 4 steps of planning, research, message, and launch. But because you've done the bulk of the work the first time, it won't take you as long to do the next one. So how do you scale your outbound efforts? The answer is to run multiple campaigns. You can also increase the amount of content, the amount of emails that you send, but I'd be very careful with that just because it is getting really, really hard to get into the inbox. Sending too many of the same emails can flag the spam trap. So what I would tend to do is create a number of different campaigns to increase the volume rather than using one campaign and sending 1,000 messages per week. Here are the campaigns that I'm currently running at TaskDrive. I'm currently targeting people on social and email if they're currently recruiting. I'm messaging people if they're a new hire. We're using the reverse IP lookup playbook. If they've recently raised a round of funding, we're sending quite a lot out there. And also we're doing some one-off content around social. And here's an example. So just to give some context, Beck Holland is somebody who released a piece of content about personalisation. And she has some incredible content. She's head of sales development over at Chorus. I saw that this person had commented on her post on LinkedIn. So I sent him a very personalized message, and within that message, I then asked if they would be interested in finding out more. And just to give you an example, I sent only 60 of these messages just on LinkedIn. I received over 30 replies. I got 12 meetings. I've had actually 3 sales so far, and I have some other meetings which I haven't held yet. So it's really, really effective. It's very small, but if I wanted to scale this, I would find several, or maybe let's just say 10 more examples like this and do the same process, make it a very highly personalized message to the right audience. So there you have it. Your 4 steps to building a lead generation machine. You need to plan, research, message, launch, and repeat. So to conclude, give first by offering value. Find people in market and build dynamic lists. Please don't buy lists. Personalize your outreach to connect with the human. Mariachi bands are awesome, and you should definitely send one to an office one day. And have fun. Have fun with your email outreach. It shouldn't be a boring chore. It gives you a chance to put your brand's personality or even your personality into your email outreach. So thank you for bearing with me. Apologies that this has to be quite quick. There's a couple of bonuses for you. If you email me at mark@taskdrive.com, I'll be able to send all of the links that I've spoken about today and the recommended reading. There's about 30 different links for the different sections as well for some additional content. If you're interested in finding out more about TaskDrive and how we can actually help you, we're offering 50 free leads that exactly match your ideal customer profile. You can see the link here. And if you want to schedule a call with me, please do so on Growth Mentor. I've turned my profile onto free. I'm more than happy to speak with anyone who's watched this video, wants to pick my brains about cold email and outbound prospecting. Thank you once again. Take care. Bye.